Welcome to the Fishery Fast Lane podcast. I'm joined with Dan Hatherley-Hurford from Plumpton College, who has welcomed us here today to record the podcast. So thank you, Dan, firstly, for that.
You're welcome.
We met through Andy probably a few years ago now, and when you bring students out to work with Andy, Fisheries, and myself out on site, it's always a good fun day. I enjoy your sense of humour. But you always know when to switch it off and be serious, and I respect that, and I think your students respect you for that. How did you get into the role that you've got into, Dan?
The recent role with teaching?
Yeah, have you got how did your career unfold? Where did it all start, and what is your story?
I think it's probably similar to many in that as a child, I was fascinated by water. I was always involved in. At any time I'd pull grandparents or my mum to the nearest place and I'd want to spend time in it and get wet. Didn't matter about my clothes and looking at things like tadpoles or invertebrates, or I was really fascinated with sticklebacks. I remember that, because they seem to be everywhere as a kid. And I was really fortunate to grow up in Somerset.
Yeah.
And I think that area is just like a plethora of natural things to do for your kids, especially when kids are outside, So I enjoyed it a great deal. And my grandfather, who was a big influence on me, was a angler,
right?
But also really well respected. He was a very practical person. He was a old school tools engineer, so he trained did an apprenticeship and did his tooling before CAD and all the machinery came into play.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I'll come back to him though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was interested in this aquatic environment stuff and used to do everything like marine, rock pooling.
Right.
It's one of the best things for my mum. She used to turn up at Kilve, which is near Minehead in Somerset, with the right weather and give me a bucket and I'd just disappear for the day. Come back to eat and then go straight back out and see what I could find. Elvers, eels and rockling and different types of blenny and different crabs, lobsters if I was lucky, stuff like that. I was fascinated by it all and still am, But my grandfather got me into angling and I am quite hyperactive anyway, generally. I sort of have peaks and troughs these days. I'm getting old, but when I do move, sometimes it's just like, shut up. But he got me into fishing to try and give me something to concentrate on,
Yeah.
And it worked. Also, he was quite old school, so I had to clean my kit after use and all those sort of mantras are passed down through to me and I pass it on to my kids and students, actually. Sort of thing. But I went through school. I wasn't particularly academic at school,
right?
With dyslexia.
Okay.
I found some things to struggle, but I was always really practically orientated. I was able to describe, articulate, design, foresight, all those things. And I think that's very useful, thinking back to what I do now, because I can see it in others and give them an opportunity, because I haven't got that kind of Victorian notion.
Yeah.
Again, that's another story. But because of that, angling, it becomes infectious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then all you can think about night and day when you've first got the infection is just everything to do with fishing. I was just fishing mad. Bless them. I lived around the corner from a proper angling centre, and I used to go in there every day and see John Blackburn, his name was, and he was a mate of my granddad, so he was understandable. And I used to be a maggot boy on Wednesdays and go and do the maggots,
right?
And do all the preparing, hand picking casters and all the stuff, because I belonged to this angling club called Bridgewater Angling Club, and it was really streets ahead in the day in the 80s and 90s. Clubs, probably because of the lack of restrictions, I would say, used to put on these coaches, and we used to go as a group. Didn't matter what background you were, where you were from, you were part of this little club, and they would take you to the club waters and you would fish. And if you won, they'd give you a little envelope with some money in it.
Right.
And we also used to inter-club competition. So I always remember fishing against the Silver Dace on the Bristol Avon, and they take us up to Bristol from Somerset, fish against them. And I think I caught 4 gudgeon. And my keep net had such big holes in it, I had to keep them in my lunchbox. I remember that. But yeah, I mean, because of that fascination, I think like many people that you've probably spoken to today, when they found out that they could do something that was related to or similar to their interests.
So where did you're in school, you've got this passion for fishing, you ended up going to Sparsholt, is that right? How did that unfold?
Well, initially I wanted to go to Sparsholt.
Right.
I was going to do countryside management at Cannington College.
Right.
And then I found out about this fishery management course, and I was like, wow, I want to do it. And so did everybody else at the time. So I applied for Sparsholt. I was a bit late in the application, but my mum's a super lady, very bright, really influenced my life actually, and such a special person. But she contacted Sparsholt and spoke to this guy called John Bramford.
Right.
And he was just new to Sparsholt, but he was head of division. And it just so happens that although Sparsholt was full, it was at capacity, every course was ram full. He'd just come from this college in southwest Scotland called the Barony. And he was the manager there before he moved there. And he said, have you considered the Barony? And my mum's like, wow, Scotland. And I was like, Scotland? And I don't know if you know, but in Scotland, the educational system is a little bit forward. So they start back at college in August.
Right.
It was literally like a week before the course started.
Right.
And my mum's very clever. And it's a bit of time has passed now, so it's fine. But she rang the Barony College and spoke to the principal and said, my son's been, we've been given your name by John Bramford, I believe played the game. Would it be possible for Daniel to come on the course? And they said, well, it's very close. We actually start next week. Would it be possible for you to bring him up for interview? So my grandfather just got an XR2 Ford at the time, like hot hatch. It was really funny. And he drove us to Scotland and I had an interview. And he said, the principal, he said, we'll give him a place subject to funding.
Right.
And my mum, the same day on the way home, phoned County Hall in Taunton and said they will give us the funding subject to place. So she said he's got the place subject to funding, and she told the college we've got the funding subject to the placement. So she absolutely winged it, and I got the funding to move the next week to Scotland at the age of 16.
Right. Okay. So when did the Sparsholt chapter come in there?
Well, I think I always wanted to go there, and when I was at the Barony, which is sadly no longer delivering sport fishery management or fisheries courses, and that was a sad day. But that's just life, The Barony over taught us. It really prepared us well, and it was an amazing experience for me. In the same way, but different to what I experienced later at Sparsholt. The kind of people that I'd met of different ages from all over the north of the country. I'd never really met Northerners, I'd never really intermixed with anyone from Scotland.
Right.
I certainly didn't know about the kind of England-Scotland divide at that time, with a bit of history, blah, blah, blah. But when you get up there, it's real, but it's only real for a bit. Okay. Actually, once all the kind of peacock syndromes back down, they were some of the best times of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I learned so much, and those friends I've got now, I'm in contact with, and I've known since I was 16.
Yeah.
The Barony, like Plumpton College, got a large estate. The difference is it's got a salmon river flowing through it.
Yeah.
It had a trout farm that we worked on every week. We got taken out to work on other trout farms, so it was quite salmonid orientated. But I got to fish in really mad areas that you've seen videos of late, like carp fishing in Scotland, fishing at Loch Maben and Castle Loch, which I knew carp were in there when I was there in, I think it was 1992, 93.
Right.
And they were still the kind of mystical thing then. I think that's at the time when, I know you saw Viv earlier, and Simon was probably dreaming about Raisbury or something like that. There's me up in Scotland in the lowlands. So I went there, and I did really well. I think if you take someone out of an environment where they're learning something with not realizing why they're learning it, and there's not correct target setting, or you don't teach them about progression properly, which is, in my opinion, what has and can happen in schooling. If you haven't got a target, it's very difficult to know where you're throwing your darts. And I did well. I finished the course 2 weeks early. I remember it's the first time I felt like I've ever had achievement, you know. And my grandfather was ex-RAF as well, so he was like super proud. The principal and some of the lecturers, that you weren't allowed to call them by first name, so it was quite old school. It was like Mr. Wood or Mr. Walker or Martin Haynes, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. Patterson, and they were so brilliant and patient at what they did, and they really taught us so well. I finished 2 weeks early.
When did the Sparsholt chapter come in?
Well, I always wanted to go there because it was like this kind of pinnacle. It's like the holy grail of going to a fisheries college. At that time, there was nothing of it. It was like Scotland or there.
Yeah.
All the other ones that have popped up and failed since didn't exist.
Right.
And I just wanted to go there. I had an option to stay and do a HND, which would probably be called the equivalent of it was a HNC then, actually.
Right.
You know, they don't exist anymore. But I wanted to go to Sparsholt, so I enrolled on a national diploma.
Yeah,
it was called then, and I met some of the people you know now.
Yeah,
and in my group was at that time like Andrew Ellis and other people
like Viv Shears.
Well, Viv was there.
Oh right,
Viv was there, but Viv was Viv had done because he's a little bit older. He was there, but I think he just finished his HND. I think that's what he did.
So what did you do when you came out of Sparsholt? Did you find work straight away, or?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Sparsholt, I did the ND the first year, and I thought, you know what? Because I got so well taught at the Barony, I found it a bit repetitive. Although that's useful, I didn't feel like I was being challenged as much.
Right.
So I spoke to the lecturers at the time, which were like Sean Leonard and Pat Houghton and Mark Badass and all the other legends, and Chris Seagrave. And I said to him, look, what do you think about me stepping up? And they said, do you think you can do it? And I said, well, look, I'm getting distinctions in this ND. I don't think I'm being really stretched and challenged. And they said, I'll tell you what, you can go on to the HND. So I transferred to the HND in year 2. So Andy stayed on the ND, I went into the HND.
Right.
But we still shared the same accommodation, which is another story. And you've heard plenty of stories about that. But I went on to the HND, and at that time, the HND in the first year degree course, which was relatively new then, a couple of years in, taught in the first year the same. And then it would splinter off. A lot of those guys went into industry, or you'd go on to year 2 or year 3.
Back then, Dan, could you see opportunities in the industry, or are you just on a bit of a whim because you love fishing? Is there an industry opportunity there?
It wasn't all about fishing. I think the underlying thing for me was just a fascination with like any aquatic life. Right. Angling was like a recreational act that gave you justification to be in an environment without looking odd or trespassing, you know. Right. I enjoyed angling. I thought that the kind of hunter-gatherer element of it, or whatever underpins the connection with angling is really important. But I was taught things like aquaculture and fish farming, and that just didn't involve fish, you know. I remember finding it fascinating learning about shellfish culture and oysters and mussels and scallops and things like that. So when you're learning something that is of interest, you become in the same way like when you first start fishing, you become engrossed in it, and I think you do well.
Was a career in fisheries on the target of yours? Was that the goal, or did you killing time?
I honestly think that you go in, if you ask, and I do, we ask students to write down what their goal is, what their dreams are, and they always say, I want to own my own lakes, first thing, and I want to be a fishery manager. Sometimes they say, do you know what, I want to farm fish. And you're like, wow. And half the time that's because their dad or something else is involved in it, and they want to take over the business. Some of them, especially nowadays, they all want to be a professional angler or a sponsored angler, and probably don't realise the tremendous effort and hardship and shortage, the shortness of those sort of availability or jobs, or what goes with it. And probably didn't articulate that very well, but they're not as easy to get as one might think, or pay enough to earn a living.
Right.
I think tackle design and being in a company is something that comes alongside that. That's probably where the package comes together. So that is one of the options for them. But for me, angling wasn't the thing. I think once I was bitten by the kind of husbandry and culture of different aquatic species, I was fascinated. And to be honest, I wanted, as a kid, I wanted to be a vet. Well, it's probably what Viv said too. But when I wanted to work in mariculture, and because I transferred from the HND, which I'll come back to now. I asked again if I could transfer from the HND. Right. And they said, if you take the 14 exams, so you take all the HND first year exams and the first year degree exams.
HND, just tell us what that is before we go.
Yeah, Higher National Diploma. And I wanted to transfer to the Bachelor of Science degree. And they said I could transfer up if I passed all the HND at merit and I passed the first year exams for the degree, which are sequence different. They're sort of different questioning styles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did it. And that's how I got onto the Bachelor of Science degree.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of what I wanted to do, I really wanted to go and farm bass and bream.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Random.
I was absolutely fascinated by it. I went and did it as one of my placements. I worked for a company which still exists. It was a subsidiary of a big company in Scotland called Kames Fish Farming.
Right.
And it was in the Peloponnese called Solomda Aquaculture.
Right. And
I worked out there as when I was on the degree. It did me a load of good in many ways, actually. I went out there at I think I was 16.5 stone from all the beer and that we were drinking at college, eating too much and trying to chase girls but getting short breathed. And when I got to Greece, I think the diet and the environment, and I was swimming and climbing, I came back just under 12 stone. And
right.
I was there for 12 weeks.
Right.
And I couldn't do one pull-up. I probably couldn't do one pull-up now. I bet Rich is laughing in the background. But I think by 11 or 12 weeks, I was doing 100 for fun.
Right.
And I came back and I was all hench, and I was, and I was like, oh, this is good. It's a whole different game,
Right.
I mean, everything about it was just what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen.
No.
I did go for a job, and for one reason or another, it didn't happen. I think it's because my age, I was quite young. Because I stepped up and went through the system, I probably hit the same ages as you would in normal education, but I was about 22 when I graduated.
Right.
And I got my Bachelor of Science degree, and a few pats on the back, because I was that hyperactive dyslexic kid of the 80s that had been pigeonholed, that then got into learning a subject that I was interested in, and then it all went good.
Yeah.
But then what did I do? I didn't get into this kind of mariculture side. I got an option at Sparsholt. Pat Houghton said to me, he said, look, I need someone to do the feed trials for what was a company at the time called Trow. And it's not an uncommon thing. I think a lot of the year 3 degree students stay on and do it because it's easy money. You're already vetted, so to speak, and they know you and they know that you'll do it, and you've got the skills to perform it. So I did feed trials. And that was supplemented with working in the college bar as well. And
about 16 stone.
Yeah, packing it all back on. It did help with the recreational life though back then. And then I got house with Viv Shears there.
Right.
He allowed me to stay in a house with Simon Elliott.
Could you tell Viv was going places that time?
Do you know what I did? Looking back, I was thinking about that. He was, as a technician. Viv, you know Viv, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, he was good at his job. He used to go around in a buggy all the time, always chatting to people, blah blah blah. He'd get the job done. But and he'd talk angling, and he did like a pint and all that. And we used to go out and stuff, no doubt about it, and had some great times. In Southampton, stuff like that. It's bonkers. But he was definitely going places. And with Simon then, I remember that kind of entrepreneurial bug. And I didn't really think about it at the time. I just thought, taking advantage of an opportunity, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Taking that advantage of opportunity.
Yeah.
He started doing, from memory, he was doing pellets, and because we had that contract with feed companies, I think they were buying it in because you can, and then the carp scene had just gone nuts, and it was all about pellet,
Yeah.
So he was selling with not with Simon, so with Simon Scott's. Lots of pellets, I believe,
right.
at that time, and the garage was full of it.
Yeah.
Anglers would turn up and buy 25 kilos of pellet, And they still do now, don't
Yeah.
they? So I think it was kind of entrepreneurial in that sense then.
Yeah.
And actually, if you think about it, the kind of footprint or template for success is already sown when you were there, because we'd all watched Chris Seagrave and Pat Houghton with Bow Lakes and their success with their fish farming, and you're qualified to do the same thing. It's that kind of leap of faith to go and do and replicate that, and maybe do it better, the same thing but better. It's a motto of Plumpton.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking that you did a stint with the EA, Environment Agency?
Yeah. At the same time, I did apply for these jobs over in the Mediterranean.
Right.
But then, whilst working at Sparsholt, this job came up as back in the day when the EA just formed from the NRA, National Rivers Authority. For those that don't know that, every now and then government has a shake-up or their subsidiaries, and they reinvent the wheel to try and make it look more efficient, and then they amalgamate different groups to make it more efficient.
Yeah.
And they formed this organisation called the EA. I think it was a year before.
Right.
And the structure started with something called a fisheries assistant.
Right.
And then it went to a grade 3 fisheries officer and then a grade 4 fisheries officer. Right. And a fisheries assistant essentially is someone, it's like a team gopher, as well as you have to organise the stores, get everything ready, prep, clean, the whole thing. The sort of things that I teach my students here, the basic skills. And I went for this fisheries assistant job in Thames region, a place I'd never been before. And I wasn't overly excited about it. A place called Hatfield in Hertfordshire, where it was based. But I got that job. And because I'd had that kind of, continuous mantra of effort and passion, I did really well.
Yeah.
I settled into the team really well. And they were like the best people to learn from. Absolute characters, some of them. Some of them still there, like senior management in the EA now. But we were an operational team, and I was doing all the stuff that you dream about, really.
Yeah.
What I did, for me, it was a dream. Like the monitoring program, we were out electrofishing on the River Lee, and all these rivers that had played a part in my reading and understanding about the history of angling. And then next thing you know, I'm on the Colne and the Lee and all these places. Electrofishing places that you've never been as an angler and you wouldn't see because you have to get in and go up to see. It's a completely different aspect than doing it.
Is that what led to Plumpton? That job, was that the last?
No.
Okay.
No. So I got a fisheries assistant job, and that was the Thames region one.
Right.
And then naturally I wanted to progress. Yeah. So I saw this job advertised in Sussex region. So it was internal advertising now. And it was for a grade 3 fisheries officer in Sussex. And I went for the job. And I came with pretty good recommendation because all right, I can be jovial and have a laugh and that, but I can also be professional if I want to be. Yeah. And I put on the right show and I got the job. And that job came with the credentials at that time. They just stepped up the ante in terms of professionalism in that under the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act. You're warranted as a constable when you're a fisheries officer. Right. And for that reason, you have similar privileges and powers as a police constable for the Act, for enforcing the Act. And that meant that I suddenly got training that I never thought I was going to get. So you had things like conflict resolution and battens and handcuff training, how to interact with public, media training, all this stuff that was just so far away from what we'd learned when I was at Sparsholt. It was just a different thing. Yeah. And I was in Sussex. I loved it. It was such a diverse job then. I had powers to 6 miles at sea, and when we were at sea we could have blue lights on the boat, and we all had helmets, and we were boarding vessels and inspecting, looking for like cash salmon and sea trout and stuff like that. And every night, like later, we even joined with other enforcement agencies. So for a couple of operations, we were working with Special Branch, right? Because they didn't have the warranted powers to board a vessel without reasonable grounds.
Okay.
But as a fisheries officer, we had reasonable powers to board, or if we had reasonable cause to suspect, we could board a vessel to investigate.
Okay.
And then special branch, because they can support a warranted officer, could follow. And what we were looking at is the drugs runs from mainland Europe,
Right.
where sea fishing boats were running drugs.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
I'm Ben Pinniger and I'm your podcast host. For those of you that don't know me, my business is called BP Milling, where I specialise in producing plant-based pellets for fisheries that break down fast. I farm my own carp entirely on my pellets, and you can see me doing exactly that over on my BP Milling YouTube channel. So if you're enjoying the Fishery Fastlane content and you haven't discovered the BP Milling YouTube channel, then there is loads more content like this where we deep dive on the science behind running fisheries, how to run fisheries in a healthy way, and how I farm my carp. There's loads of video over there of me doing exactly that. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about my pellets, we have an online shop where you can purchase the feeds directly, delivered to you in bulk or in single bag quantities at www.bpmilling.co.uk. You strike me as, like, knowing you, how I know you, you strike me as the class clown, but you've had a lot of formal, very sort of professional jobs. We haven't even got to Plumpton yet,
No.
and the lecturing, but how you obviously strike a balance, which
I think you've got to play the game.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with enjoying your job.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with having a laugh.
Yeah.
But you just need to work out when to and when not.
Yeah.
And actually, humour makes the world go round.
Yeah, and I've seen you with your students, and I think I know from myself when I had lecturers like yourself that you respect them so much more than when they're more human, and I think they are like that.
Being a person's important.
Absolutely, yeah.
100%. The Sussex thing. The powers at sea bit was just one part of it, and going out on the boat. And I had these other new people that I'd met, people like Mark Thane, and there was some other members of staff that were really inspirational. You know, again, a bit older, so you always look up to them, I think. And they knew that I knew what I was talking about, so they brought me into the team, and I was involved in everything. And in the air, if you put yourself in the right position and act in the right way, things happen. And I was given an enhancement budget, and I was given a catchment, which was the local River Ouse, right. Which is a very interesting river in that it's tidally influenced quite far into land, like up to, I think it's nearly 8 miles. And then you've got this kind of man-manipulated freshwater, tributaries and things like that, and then it goes into this influence from the South Downs, where you've got all these natural chalk springs that create chalk streams, which then flow into the Ouse and influence what can survive there. So it's really big for things like sea trout, and they're like such a marvelous creature in that they have such an interesting life cycle. Being anadromous, they go to sea where there's more of a larder, and they fatten up, and then they come back. I think it's one of the largest average sizes of sea trout in the world. They can be like up to 7 pounds or more. I think the largest one that was reported to me was over 25 pound. Right. And they are, a salmonid. They're a formidable creature. Yeah. And they swim upstream, and they spawn in the headwaters that we've got here on the estate. Right. Sussex chalk streams are rare as hen's teeth. Yeah, they're totally undervalued, and luckily there's a movement towards removing and enhancing and rewiggling and all this sort of stuff to do with rivers in the UK. And I think there's a heightened awareness now of this kind of 10-year decline in pollution. I don't want to go off on one, but there's 38 Sussex chalk streams in the world, and that makes them one of the rarest habitats on Earth. Yeah, and we've got 5 or 6 on the college's estate. Wow. It's all about time and influence and backing to try and get something done. Yeah. But back to work, I could probably nip that in the bud pretty quickly. Yeah, but that brings us up. Like, I had no idea there was so much behind you and your story and what you've done. But that brings us up to. I'm conscious that there's a lot more I want to cover in where you are now. So just give everyone a taste of what you do now. What is your job role and what does it involve? Well, I joined Plumpton in 2017. Previous to that, I was a fisheries consultant. So after the EA I did quite a lot of stuff. I went into environmental crime,
Right.
and then I was in a flying squad equivalent, and we used to go around the country doing the higher level fisheries enforcement, like the Elva enforcement on the Severn. I got trained more heavily in things like covert surveillance. We used to put a lot of camera equipment in. We used to do foot, and I got trained in foot driving and covert crops surveillance, like putting in cameras in rural areas. So that was awesome. And then after I got my end with the EA in 2010, I started my own business, and I was a consultant in the same way like Andy is now. And I worked really hard, but for a couple of years I was spinning too many plates, and I put myself in hospital 3 years in a row. I had pneumonia and hypothermia.
Really?
And the last time I did it, I was 20 minutes off organ failure.
Oh my God.
And I didn't know I was. I just thought I needed a cup of tea, you know. But the doctor said to me, "What do you do?" And I explained, and he went, "I just had a young son," and he said, "You've got to think about what you do, mate, and you need to change your career."
Oh my God.
And I always found it a struggle to get employees that were able to be prompt, on time, interested, put a full day in, and be paid for it. You know, get up early, work late, all that. It's really hard. And I thought, well, I think sometimes the only way you change something is to try and get involved in it. And I thought, well, I think I can give back like people have given to me, and did such an amazing job of it. If I can emulate even half of what they did for me, then I'll be doing the right thing in this kind of circle of life, I guess.
Where was Plumpton and the fishery course before you arrived then? Was it existing?
It was existing. It was very old. There was a really good bloke, Andy McCall, who was part of the initial setup, but it was very small. I mean, Sparsholt had always been a kind of kingpin lead animal. And other institutions, I guess, or other colleges had set up since in that time that we talked about, like Hadlow, who still exists. I mean, they're our main competitor because they're only 38 miles away, but I don't like to see it like competition.
No.
I came into education because I wanted to give back, and also I was consciously aware how fragile we are, really. I think you have to have a shock before you realise that maybe you've got to adjust what you do. Saying that now, I do run around like a blue-ass fly all the time these days. Whether I give myself enough time, that's another question. But coming into education it's been a wonderful journey. I re-educated myself as a teacher, which I think, looking back to what we said about the 80s, I think is a milestone in itself, that now I'm teaching others, but I can use my experience and understanding and empathy and sympathy and ability to look at and draw the right out of people. I can see good in what they do. I can manage behaviour. There's loads of key transferable skills that I've gained over the years that help me be a better teacher.
Do you think, Dan, with the way things are changing so fast in the modern world, that is education changing with the likes of AI coming into it, and is that being used by students, and are we less reliant on actual human intelligence now with being replaced by AI and things?
I think that's a great question, actually. In recent years, AI has come in, but we deliver something that is underpinned by sitting guilds. Now, you know, I feel that the qualification that we deliver is quite robust. And the reason for that, Ben, is because it has an exam, which is externally moderated. And there's no use of IT or anything like that in the exam unless it's because of an educational need. But that's 100% watch like a hawk. It's exam conditions. They also do unit assessments. But unlike when you do the lower courses, historically, you could go away and work on them independently. They have to be worked on, and they can be researched, but they have to be worked under set dates, under observation.
Right.
And there's also, where you've got AI, we've also got, I suppose, AI-based software that can tell you whether AI is involved. There's a system called Turnitin that uses this new software as an addition, and it tells you how familiar, how similar, and how it relates to everything on the web or other. So anything that's been digitized, it will tell you what percentage relationship it has with it. And if it's over 15%, then we have to talk to the individual, and they have to look at either mild adjustment or they're given a completely different assessment because it's felt that they've cheated.
Is on the other side of that, Dan, is it helpful in your job in teaching?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
But one thing I have learned very quickly, with any non-human system, you have to be able to guide it. And there's a tendency that if you wrote into AI, write a sequence of 1,000 numbers in any order if you like, and then repeat it, after so many times, it does the same thing.
Right.
And it's a bit like a Google search. If you put too much in or the wrong spelling or something in the wrong order, you'll get a different outcome. So it's how you use it. You can get it to work with you to support things, but it's not a kind of, in my mind, it's not a direct replacement.
Yeah.
It can help and it's powerful for research. It's good for doing things to assist you in your education. Like, for example, if you gave it a list of resources, it could Harvard reference them for you, which saves you hours of individually doing it like you used to.
Yeah, I just wondered if you're searching on AI and it's scraping the internet for information and compacting it into a package to deliver it to you like that. What if the information it's scraping isn't accurate?
Yeah.
And then people that are posting that onto a website that perhaps is going to be scraped again by AI later on, then surely our information is going to get less and less accurate and less reliable. But I don't know enough about AI to tell you.
I totally agree. One of the reasons why we use a library, and the students are in the library at the moment, and they're on a research-based task, is because within the first few weeks we do this thing called initial assessment to look at where the student is in terms of ability, their level of need or support, or the kind of level that they need to study at. So if they're at the wrong level, we can move them up or down. But we do use the library also to cement that kind of connection between books and different other methods of research. So the internet is one powerful method of gaining resources, but books are often, before they go to print, they're vetted by industry experts to make sure that they collaborate or corroborate or agree with what's written in it. And that's more powerful than someone that maybe doesn't know quite what they're talking about, but is quite influential on media and therefore listened to more. So there is that kind of difference between quality of information and there is a lot of fake news. That's a common term, isn't it?
Yeah, it's obviously angling and mental health. There's quite a lot of crossover there. Have you found coming into this role, educating the next generation, have you had to be quite clued up or researched or educated on what to look out for and how to deliver and look after your students?
We have compulsory CPDs, which is like compulsory training and development. And we obviously mental health is a real big deal and has increased exponentially over the last few years. And I think probably because of awareness and the ability to report or try and seek help. Whereas I think maybe it was a bit closeted historically. Maybe. I don't think there's a huge increase in it. I think there's maybe an increase in fake mental health. But then that's a harsh thing to say because one person's ability to cope with something is different than another's. So it's all about getting the right diagnosis. Self-diagnosis is a big deal. But then you need to have support for that, maybe. Sometimes it's just a shout for help. And we have a safeguarding team at the college that we work closely with. So there's that kind of pastoral support that we have here because we can't do everything. I mean, I think anyway, Ben, but I'm quite a busy person. I teach full time. I've got to manage staff or work with staff to make sure that we're delivering the right program. We've got a facility to manage with livestock. So there's a husbandry element to it. Plus I'm a dad, I've got my own kids. I think that's helpful, of course. But I mean, I'm a busy bee. But the sort of safeguarding and management of behaviours and helping people with that need support is really important in education.
I know when I was studying fishery management at Sparsholt, as I was leaving, I know that Viv and Simon were very aware that the curriculum was trying to be more class-based and less practical-based. And I think that was something that they were really fighting not to happen. I don't know if it's successful in the end or not, but do you find that your course there's a nice balance of practical still, or do the people above try and bring it back to a more classroom based, less experience based?
I think the courses that we deliver at level 3 still have quite a large level of practical involvement in them. But I wanted to sort of quantify a few things in that in education, you need to learn aspects of theory. And often theory is then cemented by practical action. So if you, for example, methodologies from a safety perspective, if you want to even learn how to, I don't know, something simple like putting in a fence post, there's a method that you would follow or methods you could follow. So you need to look at how that relates to things like tool selection, ground conditions, health and safety. Those are the things that you would cement in terms of theory. And you probably support that with then demonstration. And then you repeat that practically to then give them an opportunity to learn how to do it, when to do it, why they're doing it, with what tool selection they're using, etc. And I think you can transfer that across the 14 different subjects we teach on curriculum,
right?
Which is pretty vast.
Yeah.
Some of them are quite wide scoping, like estate skills, which includes things like management of boundaries. And again, that can be used in all sorts of land and wildlife industry. Keeping people out, keeping things in, keeping predators out, keeping things in, that sort of stuff. But at level 3, you certainly know how to do those specific acts. So fencing, even hedgerow management. So I teach them how to do hedge laying, because that's part of the wider curriculum. We learn about things like fault finding and rectification of engines. So things like pre-start checks. So before you go out on a job, you've probably been out electrofishing before, Ben, with Andy. If you've got 2 generators, you want to make sure they're running, that you've checked them for faults, leaks, all the things that could cause environmental damage, or lose you money because you turn up on a job and nothing's working. You've got a delay, and you're less efficient, and also people judge you on it. So starting off on the right things, like learning when to, how to safely, how to fix, how to rectify, or specific actions, following methodology, and then practical instruction, and then repeat is powerful. Some subjects do have a large theory element to it, but one of the marvelous things about Plumpton is that they've adapted this facility here, where we've got a CFAS registered fish farm next door, with both cyprinids and warm water species, and which is currently being adapted and expanded right next to the classrooms. And we call them wet classrooms for a reason, because you can literally pressure wash the classrooms down. But that's another story. So you could turn it into anything. They're like municipal. You could be doing fish biology and then break out the fish dissection kit and do a dissection right where we were doing it, You can do the dissection, take skin scrapes, put it on the microscope, show it on the big TV, write and analyze and zoom in, get them to identify. And then that cements what might not necessarily be picked up by all. Not everyone's a practical learner.
No.
But then most do come here because they think that that's all we'll be doing.
Right, okay.
But that's not the case.
Because that was probably the biggest, what I saw as the biggest opportunity when I was at college, was those work experience weeks where you're engaging with employers, and that was how I met Andy ultimately in my first year, and how I still work with Andy now. And that was probably pushing closer to 20 years ago. And I still speak with the work experience I did in my second year with Priory Fisheries. I still speak with them, and that's what I see as the biggest opportunity. So are students still able to get that work experience in modern times, or are they more classroom based again?
When I came here in 2017, in the curriculum, they're generally expected to try and do 1 work experience day a week. Now, that's great, but it has its flaws. The reason it has its flaws, to an extent, is that not all aspects of the programme are deliverable in Sussex. An example is, if I'm doing salmonid farming or talking about salmonid culture, from an environmental perspective, that's situated in Scotland at least. there are obviously some local trout farms that use chalk-based aquifers, like at Chalk Springs and such like,
Right.
for trout farming. But if you want to learn about salmon farming, you've got to go to Scotland.
Yeah. Okay.
We're fortunate in this area to have two of the major coarse fish farms in the country, although there are loads of others, which I'm aware of. I remember dealing years ago with Ben Gratwick, and he was there at Priory when you were there, no doubt. And he was another reputable company, which would be the sort of place where you want to send them.
Yeah.
But what I negotiated is try to replicate what we had. So we had 3-week blocks, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
I remember vividly going to Angler's Paradise. I think everyone did, with that angling connection.
Yeah.
With Zig Gregorick and his madness and his family and all the things that came with it, toasting and chucking wine and all that sort of stuff, netting and fish farming. I enjoyed it a great deal. And I also enjoyed, I went to Calverton, to the Environment Agency fish farm when I was a student.
Right.
And at the lower level. I think it was in our first year. And it was hard work. I think the old boys that were there weren't easy to get on with. But it's weird how life goes round, in that I had a phone call from the EA last week and I spoke to Rab, who's one of the senior guys there. And he said, Dan, we'd like to work with you and look at an opportunity to re-engage with Plumpton students. We've got harvesting coming up. We could host them for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. We'll accommodate them, we'll feed them. And, that is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And we've been working on opportunities ever since I got here. So this year is the first, actually it's not the first year, but it's the first year of organised students that are going to go up in batch groups to the Environment Agency Conservation Fish Farm at Calverton.
Right.
We also send students with not a unique relationship, but maybe unique for FE. There's a company called Hendricks Genetics that owns something called Hendricks Salmon. It's called Landcatch when we were at college, is the location. And we send students up to learn salmonid farming, principally because not only is that something that's so, so enriching, but getting that industry experience that you can't get in Sussex. You're not going to get that a day a week. It's a long commute to the west coast of Scotland, I drive them there, we leave at 3:15 in the morning. I do it at the same time, same way every time. They stay here, 3:15, leave, get to Scotland by 11. We have some food, swap drivers, get up past Loch Kilped, get up to on the west coast near where you would get the ferries to the islands. And then we arrive, and Hendricks have been so supportive. Jan Vanderberg, thank you. He helps us with accommodation in like croft cottages on an estate, which is where the Landcatch fish farm is, and he's mates with the king, so they have to be on their best behaviour. So there's a lot of reputational impact of poor behaviour, by the way, from students. But these guys have gone up there and they've really, for the majority of the time, they've waved the flag. Again, it's not a new thing. I'm just emulating what we had, and I believe, like you, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, with that said, though, Dan, is there opportunities in fisheries at the moment? Are employers coming to you looking for students?
They do, yeah. Every year, Viv rings me.
All right.
And I've always had a honest relationship with him.
Yeah.
And also, I'm honest with the legal process as well. So if he rings me and asks me straight up, I can decline or accept.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But if we're just having a chit chat about it, I can give him some pointers on when I think someone's maybe suitable or available.
What are they looking for? Are they looking for? Does practical ability trump intellectual sort of intelligence?
I think it's job dependent. I mean, if I think we've had a student, for example, might go and work in a lab working at Cambridge Uni supporting their research. I think if you've got that theoretical drive and that's what you're strong at, that's your job. That's what should suit you. I think if you're already a practical person and you've got good work ethic, and you're prompt and you're driven, they're the people that if you want someone in a fishery management or a fish farming or aquaculture scenario, they're the ones you want. And you also want fit people, don't you? You want someone that can work all day, and not moan about it. And that, I wouldn't say that has dropped. I think people moaning it's just something as you get older you notice more.
Yeah. It's just reliability, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to be reliable, and we do get a few, and some of those are successful. Aaron gets quite a lot of students that have worked via Plumpton for him, and also go to. We've got this brilliant relationship, and I really do think outside the boundaries in that we don't have a HE provision at Plumpton, so you can't progress to specifically aquaculture or fisheries. We do have a university centre, which is marvellous for like sustainable environment based courses, but not specific to fisheries management or aquaculture. So we have a relationship with Sparsholt where a lot of our students naturally want to progress there like we did. And I drive the students there, and they accept us, and they give us a tour, give us goodie bags and whatnot. And many of my alumni are Sparsholt alumni. And I think it's a brilliant thing.
Because I just wonder, with opportunities and like in such a rapidly changing world, with things like opportunities in YouTube and media, where you think actually the younger generations can probably educate to the older generations to sort of guide you to where actually there's opportunity in media of things like, well, we've seen Carl and Alex on YouTube and how they've created their own opportunities and their own path into a media industry. And do you see any changes happening there with perhaps the importance of things like YouTube as a CV almost? Because if people are putting
I think YouTube can go either way. If you get it right and you're giving the audience what they want to see, and you're intriguing and passionate and something interesting to watch, you do well. I think I mentioned earlier about, we were talking about angling history, even recent what I would call media stars for this new 16-year-old group that are coming in. Only one in 20 or something will recognise that person. Whereas if I said Carl and Alex, they recognise them. Whereas if you asked me, showed me a picture of Isaac Walton, although I wasn't around then, clearly, because of my expanded level of interest, I know who it is, but they wouldn't have a clue. Or a few of them might, And I think it's about familiarisation. A lot of them are YouTubeites, and sadly, I'm not allowed to use TikTok, but they're all over TikTok like a rash, I had the pleasure of meeting Carl when he was working with Nash, because we had a really good relationship with Nash Tackle. But that things moved on after COVID, and sadly, that's not the case anymore. Quite like it was, although we're open to it. Carl moved on. I think Alex went off to do his foraging stuff and find himself and all the things you do, I think, at that age anyway. And I didn't really know what to think about Carl. But I tell you, I went to a local tackle shop called Bodle's Angling. And Carl was there. And the queue was around the block. And I have to say, I don't mind changing my viewpoint because it wasn't for me. I didn't watch Carl and Alex, but I appreciate it. But I've watched it, and I've watched him, and I met him as a person and watched how professional he was all day. And he is an absolute ambassador for the sport. He didn't have a break. He just about had fluids. He was polite and kind to every person and genre of person. He's a legend.
I just wonder if perhaps it's not a skill to be taught in college. Maybe it's more of a school thing, but whether just having skills with the camera, it's so transferable across any industry you want to go into. And I just thought, I can see there being more opportunities nowadays in media and being more of a commercial world. And
there's no doubt about that. They all gravitate to it. Whereas before, and you know what it's like with any group of people, you go to any pub now, there are groups of people that will talk to each other and have a good drink and all that. But also there's people sitting around the table with a pint all staring at their phones. And students are the same. And so we have, I'm not draconian, but when I don't want them on their phones, they're not on it. And they respect that. I'll say, please put your phones away. And it's not a bum fight for it. I'm quite good in that sense, right? But I also use it the other way around. I ask them, I say, right, let's have a look how many different types of definitions we can get for one thing. Or can you spell that for me because I'm struggling with it? Or I use it in a positive sense. But the media side of things is powerful. It's what I watch now. I hardly ever watch the TV.
No, a lot of people say that now.
I search stuff myself. I mean, I was boring Rich earlier and saying, I've watched your stuff. It's really good. And obviously I was really impressed with the work that you did looking at that kind of time lapse in terms of response to bait and,
I love it.
And all that. And I thought that was awesome.
It is
and the matter one, actually.
Yeah, it's addictive. I think although I'm so inconsistent when I do it, I'm like, I got to do another one, because it does just, it gets people talking, it grows all channels. And I think it's one of those skills that employers like tackle companies that would probably prefer somebody with an interest in angling, perhaps coming out of college with the graduating from somewhere like this. And you just think, if they had a skill like that, that would probably...
I'll tell you what is linked to it. The college invested, and I was a bit sort of ambivalent about it really, but they invested in a new computer system, which was brought in because we've got metalsmithing and fine jewellery.
Right.
And they use it quite a lot, but they've got a CAD system for design.
Okay.
And that's a big deal in
it's huge.
tackle development.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to find those skills.
In coarse game and sea angling, which is one of the units that they all want to do. And we use angling as enrichment, by the way, effort equals reward. But there is they have to be competent in coarse game and sea angling in their second year.
Right.
But in that includes tackle development, design, enhancements, advances. They have to know about rod manufacturing, when the hooks first appeared, what they were made of, blah blah blah, everything from alarms and that. And you probably agree, if you go into my office, it's like a hoarded element of all the different tackle and styles and things like that I find interesting through probably the last 100 years plus. Yeah,
because I think when I was looking to employ, and hundreds of people apply, and you look through them, if they haven't got an interest in angling, then it's not going to be for them. So that's why I thought, like, with marketing or roles in manufacturing within the tackle industry, you'd much rather employ somebody that's got an interest in it, because they're not just going to go for the next offer that's for the guy that's paying more money, or it's a big corporate world. So having somebody that's interested in angling, I'm sure there's probably like we've been speaking about a lot today, with finding niches in markets, like where marketing is quite, probably a lot of people that study that in a much higher level
and even
deeper
writing about it. I know Rich used to produce quite a lot of good material in the magazines that he's worked for when he was a journalist, essentially. And that's really good, because you can see different styles and the passion coming through in their writing.
Absolutely.
Where people do that they did it in blogs, but now they vocalize it. We've got Faisal Sugar is one of our students, and he's a predator fisherman. He does lots of videos, probably emulating Carl and Alex, I would say.
Yeah.
And he's got loads of followers. He's on YouTube. He's one of the second years. It's not a bad egg. But the other thing I wanted to deviate away from the angling side is that teaching and learning sort of fisheries and aquatic science at Plumpton, it can lead to this blue economy, which is a worldwide thing.
Right.
And it's not just about angling. A lot of things orientate around angling, particularly sport fishery management. It's also about environment protection, and that's freshwater and marine. And that is really important. A lot of our rivers, streams, lakes, and aquatic environments are under threat.
Right.
And these youngsters that want to come in and make a difference and learn these foundation skills here to use with their UCAS points to go to university and maybe become the next marine biologist or fishery scientist or eco warrior. They can use our courses to progress in that way.
Right, okay.
So there's lots of different options in terms of employability, local to national to worldwide. European, fishery management in Europe's massive. There's plenty of options, and that also goes to like feeding, like you said, the wholesale and retail market for angling. Aquatics, wholesale, retail, food production, and then recreation.
Wow. Well, Dan, I know we're going to run out of time. I know you've got students to get back to that are waiting for you to go back. You're such a busy bloke. We've only had a flavour of that today, of you dashing in and dashing out. And thank you so much for letting us use the facilities here and showing us around the facilities of Plumpton and the Fisheries course. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And hopefully we'll have time to squeeze this. I think you've got a lot more to tell us than I think we brushed over a lot of what you've done in your lifetime. But hopefully we can come back and dig a little bit deeper.
I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Dan.
There's a tendency to talk to you about yourself a bit too much, but no, I'd love to do it again. I'd love to do one with Andy.
Yeah, we need to do that, because you two both bounce off each other. I think we ought to get one in the diary for that.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Cheers, Dan.